What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Chuck Silver and Nick Marro here with Occupy Fantasy to bring you the DraftKings and FanDuel strategy for today. I think we have a pretty good slate. Lots of wizards going on. Nick, how we doing? How we feeling?
Yeah, man. Pretty good slate. I mean, only a handful of games, but a lot of spots to talk about. The Wizards Bulls, ridiculous total. All the Wizards look pretty good, which is obviously terrifying, but here we are. We'll break it down.
Yeah, lots of wizards. Trying to figure out how many in a lineup, which ones we're going to play, but we're going to figure that out. Heath, good to see you. Thanks for being here early. Sorry, I'm just like rerunning all my adjustments to make sure that I know what we're talking about for the show. So let's just start off right at the top of the model. Wemby, Giannis, AD, LeBron. From the studs, I mean, I'm getting the most exposure to Victor Wembanyama. Are you any different there?
No, I think that makes sense, and it's mostly the matchup, right? I mean, Utah front court kind of dicey. They didn't get Kessler back, excuse me, but you definitely have to favor that matchup over what Giannis is going to see in Miami with Bam in that front court. Um, but yeah, I think Wemby just looks excellent here, and again, get well soon, Popovich. But this interim coach is much less likely to kind of put Wemby on a short leash if he doesn't come out of the gate firing. So I like Wemby a lot here for sure. Definitely number one for me.
Well, it's funny because last time we got a report that said Wemby was going to have his minutes monitored, so I actually X'd him out of my pool, and he played 34 anyway. We don't even have him projected for 34. We have him projected for just under that. So, like, if
Yeah.
they say anything like that, I don't think it matters. His price on DraftKings is pretty good. I'm over the field on both sites, and then Giannis. I thought his ownership was going to come in a little bit lower. It's still a player that I'd like to try to get close to the field, if not at the field. And then AD, I'm over. LeBron, I'm under.
Yeah. I mean, both Lakers look fine. I think they're kind of priced about where they should be on both sides, though. Suns are getting healthy tonight. Not that that really changes much for their defense. But yeah, Giannis, again, I mean, it's not that I want to fade him. I just prefer Wemby if I'm choosing between the two. But we see the fields right there with me. So maybe a little bit of thought needs to go into this in terms of game strategy. But at half the ownership, I think Giannis makes plenty of sense. Obviously, not the best matchup, but he's been doing everything lately, playing plenty of minutes. They're really leaning on him as they should be. So I like him a lot, even with Dame back in the lineup.
Yeah, Jose, I don't know if it's still flickering for other people. I'm sorry about that. I just hit play and talk and hope it works. We'll talk about that with the team later and see if there's something still going on there though. Thanks for letting us know. I was gonna go over values, but maybe we should just go team by team because I
Yeah.
already see Brogdon love in the chat. It's first game of the night. Washington is going to be the most popular team of the day. Every single player we have projected for 10 minutes is drawing double digit ownership on DraftKings. All of them except for Joval pulling double digit ownership on FanDuel. So the Wizards, Jordan Poole's out. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I think you have to like him here. Obviously, we get a bunch of extra usage and minutes for most of these guys with Poole out of the lineup because he really is kind of a usage sponge when he is on the floor. But they get one of the best matchups in basketball right now against this Bulls defense, which has been absolutely terrible. They're playing at home. It should be a competitive game. Two really high-paced teams that don't play defense. I mean, that usually spells goodness as far as DFS and fantasy is concerned. Kuzma, he's the one I think we're both like, if I could find a way maybe to get away from it, I do. But I don't know. I mean, he's playing 30 plus minutes per game. We have him for 32. Should see a ton of usage. I like him here, but I mean, yeah, you're just choosing between which Wizards. I don't think it's a question of whether you want to play them or not.
Yeah, I keep turning down Kuz in my DraftKings exposures, and I took away 4 minutes from him, which is a lot. And I still have 93%. So I don't know how we're getting away from Kuz in this matchup against Chicago today.
Yeah.
My second favorite player from the Wizards is actually going to be Keyshawn George. We have him projected for 29 minutes, and he's pulling a ton of ownership, but I don't think this price is quite correct. DK value, FD value through the roof. So he's probably the player I'd like to have the most of from this team. I'm pretty sure I'm still going to have more of Kuzma, but maybe I change that by the time Lock comes around.
Yeah, I mean, when you're considering price on both sides, sub 5K, he's the only one from this group of starters that fits that criteria. Looks excellent. If we're sorting by OF index, he's actually second in the model in terms of upside ahead of guys like Brogdon, like Jovel, Sar, etc. So really, I mean, you do want to be getting to a lot of him. And obviously, 30% is a pretty high ownership rate on this slate, but comparing him to some of the other pieces of this roster, he's a little bit underrepresented. So I like it a lot. I think George is definitely one of the first guys to have in your lineups tonight.
And that's a good point because a lot of the time these value guys will show up with strong values but poor OF index. Keyshawn
Mhm.
George having an 8.4 OF index, like it's not that good, but it's unexpected, I guess.
Yeah.
And then SAR, I mean, I have 15% SAR on DraftKings right now, and on FanDuel, I have even less. I have 10%. I mean, the model's telling us he's a strong value. Field is really getting there, but I just find myself shying away and getting to more of the other guys, I guess.
I mean, coming in on any under on any of these guys is scary, right? Because it's such a good matchup. I mean, all these guys have upside. So if you're under on any of them, it's not going to feel great. I will say Sar's minutes more than the rest of this group has kind of fluctuated a little bit. He is the rookie. They do want him on the floor as much as possible. But at the same time, I mean, we see him in there 23 minutes on the 17th, 24 on the 18th. A couple weeks ago, he was barely getting to 30 minutes at all. So yeah, I mean, we are projecting all these guys for healthy minutes tonight, but with what's his name, but Bagley back in the rotation now, that could maybe cut into Sari and Joe Bell just a little bit. So yeah, I'm more comfortable kind of getting to the backcourt pretty heavily in the wings with guys like George, but I'm not going to sit here and say Sar's a bad play. I mean, he has 40, 50 point upside in a matchup like this, but at the same time, I mean, we're really just kind of, I don't know, what's the word, splitting hairs, trying to really decide between these guys. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable coming in a little bit under on him to get a little bit over on some of the other pieces.
I absolutely agree. Malcolm Brogdon, the question that sparked this whole thing. So, as I mentioned on the last show, I really don't think the model's reading Brogdon correctly because this, like a lot of guys, I understand why their value scores aren't showing up well when they look like good value, but Brogdon, I really don't understand. So I think the model is just kind of docking him a little bit too much. He's projected for massive ownership on FanDuel, modest ownership on DraftKings, I guess, at the price, but projected for 27 minutes. What do we do with Malcolm Brogdon?
I mean, I actually think he's probably the safest wizard today, and I know that's a little bit crazy to say. And I don't have like the look under the hood for the model, so I don't know this is if this is 100% true. But I imagine since he just came back from injury, we're still getting some of that data from his time with Portland, where he really didn't get that many games in, and then back to Boston, where even when he was on the floor, I mean, his fantasy point per minute rate was kind of compromised by being on the floor with a bunch of all stars. And then, yeah, coming off the bench, sharing time with Scoot and others when he did finally get court time in Portland. So I don't know that the rates are fully adjusted for what his role is going to be in the offense. Even with Poole on the floor, I mean, he really is the facilitator now. He's going to be doing a lot here. So I think that fantasy point per minute rate is going to rise on a player like him. And obviously, in the matchup like this, I mean, that ceiling is even more boosted. So while it's true, I don't know, maybe he's capped around 30 minutes. We only have him for 27, which seems a little bit conservative. But even so, I do feel better about his point per minute rate than a lot of these other guys in terms of consistency, in terms of floor. I just think he's probably one of the safer Wizards to get to.
So we have him projected for 27 minutes. He played 26 and 25. I
Yeah.
don't know if we can project him for 27 minutes. Like he could play 27 minutes, but it just, I don't know. I gave him 25 and I have 0% of Malcolm Brogdon on both sites, which I probably will change. But the point I'm trying to make there is just, I don't know that he's a guy that deserves this much ownership.
I get what you're saying. Like, I don't know. At the same time, I don't know. It's just tough to really come in under any wizard here. And his point per minute rate when he's been on the floor has been solid. And I think it could only climb. I mean, this isn't a back to back. 2 games back from injury. He's playing 25, 26. I can see them boosting it to 30. Like when we go back to when he was with Portland, he's a guy who's playing close to 40 minutes per night. So he's capable when he's 100% healthy. I totally agree that we can't project him for over where we have him at right now just because we haven't seen it. Um, but he's fully capable of getting us to run here. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Let's see if we have anything in the chat. Yeah, we touched on George. Nick, for larger fields, should we have two Wizards players?
I mean, as far as chalk goes on this slate, like if we're looking across all the teams, I think the Wizards chalk is the safest chalk. So we always say, like, if you're going to eat chalk, eat it with the value. Look to get different with your payups, and I think that's kind of the way it should be for you tonight. I would have trouble on either site building a lineup without at least two Wizards, just because they do present so much upside in terms of point per dollar value. Someone like George Brogdon, I mean, you're starting with a 4 and a 5K player that really kind of boosts what you can do with the rest of your lineup. So I just think they're really good pieces to kind of build upon. And at high ownership, I mean, the risk isn't as high necessarily as it would be if they were more expensive.
Yeah, on FanDuel, it looks like I have at least two Wizards in every single lineup. On DraftKings, I have at least two Wizards in most lineups, but some lineups I only have one. And again, that could change before lock. Because another thing to keep in mind, I mean, we really don't have that much news we're waiting for, so I'm not too concerned about locking up that many roster spots from the first game. I think Jalen Green is really the only big piece of news we're waiting on, right?
I believe so. Yeah, Suns guys are back tonight. We already know that, right? So, um, yeah, that's pretty much it for now. Or
And
Mike Conley is actually the one other one.
oh, and Mike Conley, yeah, that's going to affect a couple of things. Super small sample with Jordan Poole off the court and Malcolm Brogdon on the court, but Malcolm Brogdon has a 24% usage rate. Keyshawn George 13%, which is bottom of the league. For reference, I don't know, league average is 20, I think.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Alex Sarr, again, super small sample, but he actually has the highest usage here after Joe Val. Joe Val just, he's going to play his minutes. I mean, Joe Val, are you getting to any of him?
I usually don't like. He's usually someone I just flat out avoid. But I think here against the Bulls and against Vucevic, they may want him on the floor a little bit more than usual. So, I mean, especially on DK where he's 4,800, I think he makes a lot of sense. It's easier to kind of get away from it on FanDuel where you only have the one center spot. But I will say, more than usual, I do think I want some exposure.
Yeah, I'm not quite at this 24% on DraftKings, but I do have 15% over there, but 0% on FanDuel right now because, like Nick said, only one center spot's tough.
Mhm.
On the other side of this game, Chicago, I see someone asking about Desunmu in the chat. Let's see, does Brogdon start? Yeah, Brogdon should start. I see no reason why he wouldn't.
Yep. Probably is a good start.
Uh, Desunmu. Yeah, so looking at the Bulls, I mean, we saw Desunmu start two games in a row now. I think the first one was kind of unexpected, and then he was chalk on the last game. I think he was pulling some ownership today again, right? 16 and 23. It's not too bad. What are you doing with Io Desunmu here?
I mean, I'm not as confident in him as I am some of these other pieces for the Bulls. But yeah, as long as Patrick Williams is out, he should continue to start. It's just he's been shooting terribly. It's interesting though, like in seasons past, I mean, you could get a decent floor out of him as long as the minutes were there. Wasn't as scoring dependent, but for whatever reason, it seems like his game has changed a bit this year, spending more time kind of hanging out beyond the arc. So those points, I mean, those baskets do need to fall for him to hit value. Um, Capable of getting stocks and all those things. We just haven't seen him as frequently this year. In a matchup like this, I think he's fine. Again, I mean, you're looking at game logs. He's been terrible, but that's mostly because the shot hasn't been falling. The minutes are there, so I wouldn't talk anyone off playing him.
Yeah, the minutes are pretty volatile. Two games ago against Atlanta, he played 38. Last game, he played 29. Both, pretty close games, and we've seen 32, 33. I actually think the minutes projection we have for him is a little bit high. I gave him 31, and that puts me actually with the field on both sides, so I'm going to be okay with that. From Chicago, the other guys, I mean, Zach LaVine has been kind of chalky every slate he's been on. He's like, his price is good, but he's been letting us down. Are you interested in going back to him?
Yeah, I'm fine with him, and the only reason I say it is because he is the forward here. Like we're talking about White and Giddy as kind of alternatives, but they're the guards, and there's a lot of guards to like. There's not always this many forwards, so I'm fine getting to him. But to your point, I mean, his price hasn't come down. It probably should have a little bit. He can still spike his ceiling on occasion. It's been a long time since we've seen it. I think the 13th he had a really good game. Since then, I don't know that he's hit value at his price on either site at all. Like he's close. He's kind of like a quintessential cash play. Like you're going to get your 35 fantasy points out of him. But lately, with how high scores have been on a lot of these slates, I think you probably need more than that in tournaments. So I think it's a weird answer, but like I think in cash games, you're still probably going to Levine. But in larger field tournaments, I'm very comfortable getting away from that ownership.
Yeah, at the 35 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, the rest of the industry has him projected for a little bit more, which is going to make him show up in lineups a little bit more. But I mean, I'm a little bit under the field. I don't mind it. What about the other guys? Vooch, Giddy, Kobe White. What do you like the most from there?
Um, I think Giddy, I'm pretty comfortable with. I mean, the games we've seen his minutes limited have come against teams where he can't play defense against the guards. Like against Milwaukee, couldn't deal with Dame. Against Cleveland, couldn't deal with Garland and Mitchell. In a matchup like this, where he's dealing with Brogdon and Koulibaly, I think he's fine. Should be able to play 30 plus. So I do like Giddy a lot here. The issue is just that he's going to be relatively popular. I think I got to pull up these ownerships. Yeah, 20%. I mean, I'm very happy to get over that. I feel a little bit better about him than I do Kobe White just because of the discount. But all three of those guys you mentioned, I mean, Vooch looks great as well. Good matchup for him against Sarr and the others. So Levine, fine, not crazy about it. Giddy at his price, I think, probably has the most upside. But I'm definitely comfortable getting to plenty of Kobe White and Vooch as well.
Yeah, like in my head, Giddy's like, and I've been kind of talking down about Giddy, but I don't know. The coach likes him, I guess. He only played 21 minutes. He put up 38 fantasy points in 28 minutes. We're not gonna, or in 21 minutes. We're not gonna expect that every game.
Yeah.
But I am over the field on him on DraftKings. FanDuel, I'm finding it a little bit harder to get to him there. And then I love Vooch tonight, and Kobe White I kind of see as I don't know, just a GPP play, I guess.
Yeah, and just to your point about Memphis, him only playing 21 minutes, like it's a very clear pattern with the Bulls right now. In the games against these really strong guards, like superstars like Ja, SGA, etc., you're going to see less minutes for Giddy in those games because they do need to get more defense in there. And yeah, against a team like the Wizards with this backcourt, I don't see why he can't just play as many minutes as he can tonight.
Yeah, and so the 28 is probably a pretty safe projection. I mean, because if we gave him 2 more minutes, he's going to be one of the top values. Really strong
Yeah.
OF index for his
This is the type
price.
of matchup I would have him for 30 personally, but obviously, in making that adjustment, like you'd get him in too many lineups maybe. But I
Is
really do like Kitty here.
45% in too many lineups on DraftKings.
Um, eh, I don't hate it honestly. I mean, you're double the field. I kind of like it.
I think that there's some value in these cheap guys here, Modest Buzelis and Jalen Smith. Modest Buzelis was very popular last time. I think he was like the top of our value, and he tanked this game. Still projected for 21 minutes, which I actually think is more than the rest of the industry. So looking at these DK values, are you interested in going back to Buzelis?
I don't mind getting to him, and again, I'm more on FanDuel where he's cheap. Like one of the only plays I think sub 4K that I have any interest in tonight. It was weird, right? I don't know if it was the Memphis game or the Atlanta game. He came out unbelievable. He had like a first half for the ages. It looked like he was going to 10x his salary, and then he did nothing the rest of the entire game. So I don't know. I've been kind of hot and cold on this kid. I know he has the upside. I know he can score, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. If he's popular, I don't feel great about it, but he's not. So yeah, I'm fine mixing him in tonight. It's just tough for me to call him a priority until we see more consistent minutes out of him. But I do like him, and I think with Williams out there is opportunity for him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm getting a little bit of him over on FanDuel, none over on DraftKings, though. And then Jalen Smith is, to me, a 0% play on FanDuel, given he's center only. But at 3,600 on DraftKings, he could make the difference. He's only 5% owned tonight. So this is a player to consider mixing in.
Yep, I don't mind it at all. And I did just want to say one more thing about Buzelis. It seems like he's taken the Torrey Craig minutes. If you're kind of looking at popcorn machine or whatever else, Dalen Terry's still going to get his run. He'd probably be the other only piece of value off the bench I have interest in. But yeah, Buzelis, they seem to like what they got with him.
Nice. Struggling with playing Wemby or having more of a balanced build, Vooch being your most expensive player?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I mean, if you're playing Wemby, I think there's enough value, especially with Washington, to get to him pretty easily. It's just a question of what the rest of your lineup looks like, right? So if you're going down from Wemby, say he's at your center to Vooch, what are you doing with that extra salary? Is it just upgrading like Keyshawn George to Koulibaly? Like, or is it Keyshawn George to Kuzma? Or is it something more dramatic where you're getting another couple of 8K plays in there? Because then it might be worth it. But if you're just kind of upgrading Wizards within the Wizards, I would probably favor going a little bit more stars and scrubs.
Yeah, so over on FanDuel, my single entry today, right now, it probably will have Wemby by the time lock comes, and then it has five guys in the 6K range, and then a couple value guys. So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, where I'm at today. So it
He's
looks like
easy to
if,
fit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and we have enough guys to get to him. But that balanced build, I don't mind it because I'm looking at actually my top lineup on DraftKings does not have Wemby, but it does have Vooch. It has Anthony Davis in it too, and then Josh Giddey in the 6K range, and then a few of those 4K value guys. So both builds are viable, I think. I think the field is really going to lean towards paying up for Wemby and paying down at guard, though, just because we have a few good options at guard, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to like at guard tonight for a pretty small slate. So, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Next game, Miami, Milwaukee. We'll start with Miami. We had a question anyone like Bam tonight, or is this why you're struggling? So I think these Miami guys are basically like kind of last guy in type plays, or maybe if you build your lineup, it's super chalk and you just need that kind of lower owned guy to throw in. I'm not really targeting any of them. Jimmy's been going off lately, but I don't know. This ownership actually seems a little bit high against Milwaukee. What do you think?
Honestly, I'm fine with Jimmy. I'm fine with Hero. I'm fine with Bam. Those are the three I have any interest in at all, really. Other than that, I'm not getting to any Miami, at least not right now. But like you said, it's not like I'm like, oh, I really want to get to any of these guys. They're just pretty good where they're priced. Jimmy has been going off, but he's going to be dealing with a lot of Giannis tonight. Still think he could do fine here, but yeah, I'm not going to call any priorities. But I think if you're getting to any of that three, I feel fine. Rozier, just kind of priced where I don't necessarily want to get to him, especially coming off an injury. But yeah, Bam, Butler, Hero. If you're landing on them, fine, but don't change your bills to get to more. I think wherever you're at is probably where you should be.
Well, I'm at 0% of these guys on FanDuel, and so I do want to make sure I get at least a couple percent of something going on here, and then same with DraftKings too. But like Nick said, no one here stands out as any kind of priority, not even the value.
Yeah, Bam no longer has power forward eligibility on FanDuel, so that's kind of keeping him down.
How many minutes for THT? I gave him 5.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, again, this is a team that's not good. They're kind of testing the younger players. They might trade Zach LaVine. I don't think they really care about Horton Tucker or what he can do. But at the same time, I mean, he does have upside. We've seen it. And if he gets hot, who's to say they don't let him run in a really good matchup defensively against the Wizards? So in 150, I don't think it's crazy to get to a little bit. But at the same time, I'm not at all rushing to get there.
It's just no one's out, so there's not an obvious spot for him to pick up extra minutes.
I mean, Williams is out, right? But it's still, we've seen most of
That's
that go to
true.
Gonzalez.
That's true. Yeah, Eason going to go off tonight. I do like the Rockets. We'll get to them. Buzelli, free Fred VanVleet. Kispert minutes. I think we forgot to talk about Kispert for Washington. Let's go ahead and we are done with Chicago. We'll jump back to Washington real quick. Corey Kispert played 36 minutes last game. We haven't projected for 31. I think he's in line for big minutes again. He's going to be chalk. This is the type of player I'd prefer to play when he's lower owned. I'm still playing him a bunch, but what do you think about Kispert?
Yeah, that's the type of I like tonight. I'm fine, like kind of matching the field. Like I don't really want to take a stand in either direction. He's the type of player when I play him, he sucks. When I don't, he goes for 40. So yeah, I'll just kind of match the field and just grin and bear it. Honestly, very scoring dependent. Should play 30 minutes though, coming off the bench again. Tremendous matchup for all these Wizards. I was thinking he'd be a little bit lower owned than some of the rest of this group, but he's not. Almost 40% on FanDuel, 22, 25 ish on DK. Good play, but at the same time, I don't want to take a stand on a play like this in either direction. High ceiling but low floor. Just match the field and kind of move on to the next, in my opinion.
Brogdon gets a bump with no pool and Kispert. I agree. The data so far doesn't show that, but intuitively it has to make sense, right? It's just such a small sample size, but we'll get more information over the next couple of weeks. I guess if Poole misses more time,
Yeah, especially with Kuzma, kind of like I don't know.
being terrible.
Tonight may be the night that he kind of looks like himself again, but he's kind of been deferring a lot lately. So I don't know. We'll see what
That's the
happens.
problem with Kuzma. It's not even just that he's missing shots; it's that his usage has been league average. Which we're not playing Kuzma for league average usage. We're playing him for really high usage, and now his price is kind of reflective of what he's been doing lately. But it just, like Nick just mentioned, we know the ceiling this guy has.
Right,
Uh,
right.
Javier Bucks are terrible though. Talking about the Heat, it's just the problem is they're all priced probably a little bit too high, as if someone was out because people have been in and out of the rotation. I mean, Terry Rozier is coming back tonight, and so that even throws another wrench into things. So, and like Milwaukee being terrible, that's already kind of baked into the model. The model knows that, and Jimmy and Bam are showing up as good plays. It's just there are bigger priorities on the slate.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I'm fine getting to all three of those, but I don't know. They're good, not great. Again, this game's total is 20 points lower. I think every game on the slate, the total is 20 points lower than it is in this first game. I guess the late game's kind of in between, but yeah, it's just tough to get to these pieces because they're not cheap. They're kind of priced where they should be.
And on the other side of this Miami game, we got 3 comments about Gary Trent. Gary Trent's a sneaky play. Also has Trent put me in the game coach. And Hawk Dark. Love Trent. Yeah, so Trent, I actually did take a closer look at it earlier. What are your thoughts, Nick?
He's fine. I mean, I don't know. He's kind of like Corey Kispert with lower ownership tonight, in my opinion. Wide range of outcomes, high ceiling. If you're looking to get off of some of that Wizards chalk, I think he's a good way to do it. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, Trent's going to crush because he's such a streaky shooter. He's been shooting the ball well lately, but he goes hot and cold as often as anyone. So I'm fine with it. I like him at the price. I think he's a good play. I like him as a pivot off of chalkier guys in that range, but I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, Gary Trent's going to go for 30 or 40. I don't know. It's never a player I'm super confident in.
So with Gary Trent, I'm getting 0% currently. He's projected for a low ownership. I don't disagree at all with the ceiling stuff. I just will point out that the model has his OF index awful, and his DK value and FD value is probably ranked around 100th on the slate. And so I'm not personally getting there today, but I really hate to talk the chat off someone who could end up being the tournament winner. So do with that as you
Yeah.
will.
I mean, if you're thinking about Gary Trent, you're doing the right thing because he's
Mhm.
priced in the range of a bunch of chalk that we don't necessarily feel that great about. But at the same time, I mean, for Kispert and George and Koulibaly and all these guys to fail and Trent to be the one that really outscores them, I mean, you're still threading kind of a really narrow needle. But I don't hate it. But at the same time, I mean, he's low in the model for a reason.
Yeah, and when I'm targeting low owned plays, like I'm not going to play a Gary Trent just because he's low owned. I have to have another reason to do that. Or if maybe if it's a stud that's low owned, it's just because Gary Trent has to do so much to be a better value than these guys. And I don't disagree that he's a fine pivot off them, but just consider what has to happen for him to be in the winner over whoever you're pivoting off of.
Yeah, he's going to get real hot from three. I mean, he did take 5+ in each of his last 6 games, which is good to see. But you need like 3 or 4 of those to fall to feel good about his night.
Did Giannis just pop up on the injury report?
Um,
Yeah, 5 minutes ago.
oh God.
It's
Well,
never good.
new slate.
Yeah,
Start
complete.
over.
It's just going to change everything we've been talking about.
I
All
mean,
right,
this is
so
easy to talk about, right? Yeah, I mean, so if Giannis is in, he's great. We were already getting to Wemby over him. So if you're building around Wemby, I don't think you have to go crazy. But if he's out, I mean, this is going to be Bobby Portis first and foremost. You're going to want to get all the Bobby Portis in your lineups. This has often been the case. I mean, Dame is probably a little bit too cheap for what he could do with the extra usage, but you got to keep in mind this is Miami they're playing. So it would be Bobby Portis as kind of the core play. Dame would look just as good, if not better, than the rest of the guards on the slate, but it's not like he's going to stand out in a huge, huge way. And then Brook Lopez is the one who tends to go overlooked, but you definitely want to get a little bit of his exposure in there as well. But Portis will be a core everywhere and probably like 80% owned if Giannis is ruled out.
So here's the thing: he will not come in 80% owned, but he absolutely deserves to. So
You
if
don't think?
Giannis, no, I don't think the field swaps. I don't think the field gets there enough. Like maybe he'll come in like 60%, depending what time we get the news. But I'm
Mm,
like, what I'm trying to say is just I'm locking Bobby Portis if Giannis is out, and I'm
yeah.
just going to take all the leverage because this price is super wrong if there's no Giannis tonight. And Portis was actually a guy I was already trying to force in a few percent, even if Giannis is in. This 5,500 price on DraftKings is really appealing either way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm with it, man. And like I said, Lopez too. I think he's going to be under owned for what he should be able to do with Giannis out. But I don't know. I mean, if you're Giannis, I don't know how you're not trying to play here. At the same time, it's weird to get added to the injury report this late in the day.
One thing that I don't know if we've mentioned it yet today, but it is the NBA Cup every Tuesday and Friday. I think we have a few more weeks of this, but
Uh,
I don't really make many adjustments. Maybe I give an extra minute or two to starters here and there, but I mean, I just kind of think starters can play longer. Blowouts do not matter as much. Maybe a couple coaches care, but most of them don't.
yeah, no, it's true. You can't really make too huge of an adjustments. And was it Trey Young who the Hawks just got fined for? He sat out when he could have played for an NBA Cup game, so they fined the Hawks $100,000. Um, I
So
don't know.
dumb.
Yeah, it's so goofy, but I think Giannis is like healthy enough here. I'm just confused why they'd add him so late, unless it's Doc trying to like, I don't know, megamind crap like he does do sometimes. But it's listed as a knee injury for Giannis. I don't know. He always has knee issues. Like if this was earlier in the day, I think he was playing. But the fact it just came out right now, it's giving me some pause.
And this is the second game. We're going to get this news probably right after the Washington game starts. And so, I mean, I don't know what kind of leverage we're getting if we build with Giannis out because people are going to be able to swap anyway. The only difference would be is that you get less ownership to the Washington game, so you can take more advantage of things like Bobby Portis and maybe Damian Lillard, whoever else pops up from the Bucks. Because Torian Prince was on the injury report too. That was kind of, or maybe he came off of it actually.
Um, yeah, he's listed as probable with
Okay,
an illness, so I don't think that was too.
so I see a couple mentions about Pele Larson in the chat, and this is definitely a play that if you're playing, you're going beyond the model because he is the worst ranked play on the entire slate today, projected for 12 minutes. But if you give him 20 minutes, he's going to show up with a double digit DK value, which is still very poor. But again, if you're making these type of plays, you don't care about what the model says about him.
Yeah, I mean, people are playing him off of one good game, so usually that's not the way to go. Personally, I'm not crazy about it, but just seeing that he just went off for 30, I mean, if he does it again, I'm going to sound like an idiot. So, yeah, you can mix him in, but to me personally, I mean, one game isn't enough for me to really try to get some piece of value.
Yeah, and it's not even like he's been priced. He's not that much cheaper than the other guys that we know are going to play 25 plus minutes today.
Yeah, Jovic has only played 5 and 8 minutes his last two games. I feel like those Larson minutes came directly from him. I don't know if that's something to expect going forward, but I thought Miami liked Nikola Jovic. I'm kind of surprised that he's been seeing such a cut. But unless we hear some coach speak, I don't want to look too deeply into that.
Eating the chalk on Levine. I'm not. I don't think it's bad if you do though.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at his price, like you need 40 plus fantasy points out of him to feel good about it, if not even a little more. He's okay. I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable getting away from that more so than I am some of the Wizards chalk.
Highsmith was in foul trouble too last game. Maybe that led to more
Good
Larson
call
minutes.
there. Yeah, that's probably why. Only 18 minutes for Highsmith. Yeah, you had 4 personal fouls. Um,
How many
Definitely kind of
lineup?
opened that window.
In a 5 game slate, 100 lineups, pretty much everyone is in play. I mean, guys that we have projected for real minutes, yes.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, yeah, you still want them to be on the floor, obviously. But yeah, I guess generally speaking, that's not a bad way to look at it. It's just tough. Like, if you really like a player who's a little bit underowned and you want to get over the field, it's tough to really balance your exposures so that you're getting all these players on the slate. If you really want to take a stand on something you like. So I don't know. It's more of a conservative way to have a super big player pool, but if you're taking stands in tournaments on low owned guys you like, then it's kind of tough to really have all the plays.
Hawk Dark, you prefer Vooch over Levine? Vooch is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, I like Vooch more than Levine. Only slightly more expensive. Does take the center spot, which isn't ideal, but we've seen him consistently over that 40, 45 point threshold. Can't say the same for Levine right now. And Vooch does a lot under the rim. I mean, you have a boosted floor with the rebounding. Pretty good matchup here against Joe Valsar, Bagley.
I want to talk about this next game, Houston, Minnesota. I want to start with Minnesota because I'm not interested in too much there. Do you have anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean Conley's a big question mark. I think if he's in, I'm not really rushing to him, but he'd be another guy who's kind of priced in that 4K range to maybe get off of some of the chalky Wizards. Personally, I don't know that I'd want to do it, but if he's out, Alexander Walker could get the start. He'd probably become somewhat appealing. I know he's been pretty terrible the last couple of games with Conley out. Dillingham actually has gotten a little bit of run here and there. More than anything, though, I don't know. It's just, do you want to play Conley if he's in? I'd say a little bit. But if he's out, it's not creating like some huge vacuum for usage for anyone. It's not like he's a super high usage player anyway.
Yeah, and to your note about Nickeil Alexander Walker, I mean, if we get that news after all those Washington players lock, he's going to whatever ownership people are able to swap onto is not going to be what it would be if we had that news right now. So he's going to be a really, really good leverage play. But I'm not going to build as if Conley's out. I'll be able to swap onto some Nickeil if that happens, but I don't want to like build my whole slate around Nickeil Alexander Walker. But he would be a very good leverage play.
Yeah, same with Dante DiVincenzo. I think his minutes would be a little bit more secure as well. But again, I mean, one of the lower total games on the slate. Tough Houston defense. There's nothing there I'm like clamoring to get to either way.
Yeah, I got a couple percent of Ant, and then Julius Randle is the player I'm getting the most of from this team, but no one over 10%.
Yeah, Edwards, Randall look fine, but they're kind of like the Miami guys in that they're priced where they should be.
Now, Houston, I think Alperen Sengun is my favorite GPP play on the slate. His minutes we have projected for 31 in close games. He's been playing more. This is projected to be a close game, so I gave him 3 extra minutes, which is enough to get him in a ton of my lineups. Jalen Green is questionable. What do you like from the Rockets?
I mean, Van Fleet's been playing better. I think at his price, he makes some sense. As I say that, he's coming off 2 games where he shot terribly against Portland. But I don't know. I've seen enough out of him lately that he looks like himself. Obviously, a better play if Green's out. I'm with you on Sengun. I think he's good here. I mean, it's not the best matchup in the world against Gobert, but if no one's going to play him, that upside makes a lot of sense. Eason off the bench, better play over on DK. Amon Thompson off the bench, really, really good play over on DK. Priced similarly to a lot of the Wizards value. I think Thompson on DK might be my favorite Rocket, which is kind of weird to say with him coming off the bench. On FanDuel, I'll mix in some Van Fleet and some Sengun for sure.
Yeah, this Amon Thompson price at 5K, I'm just going to keep slamming him every day. Even the
Yeah.
26 minutes, like this might even be a high minutes projection by a couple minutes, but the 5K for the ceiling he's got, I mean, some days it's not going to work. The days it does, maybe you win a tournament. 6K on FanDuel, I still think he's playable at 5%. I'm going to get
Yeah.
there. And then Jabari Smith, his minutes have been super volatile.
Yeah.
29 is a fine minutes projection. He has a ceiling, I guess. It's just when he doesn't put up the ceiling, he puts up literally 12 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, depending on your risk tolerance, probably a guy you do want to mix into your exposures if you're playing a bunch of lineups. But yeah, definitely not someone in single entry or cash you'd be looking to. Single digit floor, 8 to 10x his salary in terms of ceiling at that 4,500 price tag. Can say the same for his buddy Dylan Brooks. So yeah, they look okay as tournament plays. Both very much boom or bust though. Good in large field, not much else.
I was going to point out something with this team. Okay, so if Jalen Green is out, Fred VanVleet is the clear beneficiary in terms of usage. He gets a 5% usage bump. Jabari Smith gets a 4% usage bump. After that, the other thing that kind of impacts this is Amon Thompson gets the minutes boost. So I think he would absorb some of those minutes, maybe even start. If Amon Thompson starts, he's the best play on the slate.
Yeah.
And so keep an eye on that.
Yep, totally agree.
Trying to get what's max wizards per team? Four. A lot of my DK lineups have two or three though.
Yeah, you could get to four just because they are so cheap. I'm trying to think if there's any rules I'd set. Probably don't want Joval and Sar in the same lineup. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I'm comfortable with four. It's just most of them are 5K ish or cheaper. So
It's so weird. Doc Rivers didn't even know Giannis was questionable. They had to tell him during his press conference. So he, I don't know. I might
that's
build with him
bad.
out. Yeah, I might X him out and lock Bobby Portis, and then I should be able to fix it if Giannis is in. But I think I'm going into slate like that. Yeah, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do that because again, I think Kuzma of all the Wizards that we're getting to heavily today was the one I didn't feel the best about. Portis a little bit cheaper than him. Maybe that's the spot that I use to get to more Portis if people are going to lock in Kuzma early. But yeah, there's enough to pivot off. If Giannis does end up in, we got the Spurs, Jazz. I mean, the game we just talked about. There's a lot of other places to look.
Yeah, Fred VanVleet might not get the favorable whistle tonight. Um, this is a real cup game for Houston, Minnesota. That's a good thing to point out. Appreciate you, Power. Yeah, it'll be tight rotations for sure there. And then Harrow tonight, I think he's fine if you get a couple percent. Not a guy I'm targeting at all. All right, so we have like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, probably don't want him in my Jimmy lineups, but those two kind of similar plays. They're both fine.
So we have like 3-4 minutes to get through the last games and go through the dummy. Luckily, I don't think much is interesting from Lakers Phoenix. Guys are coming back. Everyone's kind of priced appropriately. We'll take a quick look though. But San Antonio, we already talked about Wemby. Think he's a great pay up. I'm going to be over the field on both sides. Chris Paul, Stephon Castle are both pulling ownership. What else do we like from San Antonio?
Yeah, I like Paul. I like Castle. Devin Vassell's still out, and he
Mm.
takes up a lot of usage whether he starts or comes off the bench. So that's definitely helping this backcourt feel a little bit better about their minutes too. The interesting play, and I don't want to spend too much time, it is Harrison Barnes. He was named the NBA Player of the Week, coming off three ridiculous games where he was scoring 35 to 40 fantasy points. Um, Usually I'm like, this is not something you want to be doing, chasing Harrison Barnes ceiling games. 2% on FanDuel at 5,400, and he fills both forward positions. It's pretty easy to get a little bit over on that. As gross as it sounds, and as much as I know this is not sustainable, um, I'm a little bit surprised he's not at least a little bit more popular. So I'm fine mixing in the hot hand. No, he could go cold and get me 8 points and ruin my night, but I'm not going to have my night hinge on him. Like you could very easily get way over the field as playing 10 to 20%.
Sorry, that was Harrison Barnes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw out two other tournament plays from this team. Keldon Johnson, I think his ownership's a little bit too low. His price is probably a little bit too low, even with Wemby in. And then Trey
Yep.
Jones, he played minutes alongside Chris Paul last game. It was only a couple, but I think that is pretty good for the upside potential. He got over 20. We have him projected for 17. He's coming in unowned on DraftKings at 34. I mean, he's 6%, but 3,400 on DraftKings. I think that's a solid shot if you need another really cheap guy or trying to mix in a low owned player.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I'm interested. Yeah, I thought he'd be Paul's direct backup. It seems like he's backing up Castle a little bit as well. So, like you said, they're sharing the floor. That just boosts his floor in either direction. So, yeah, I'm fine with it at that price. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I gave him 19 minutes today, which is probably dangerous. I might lower that by the time the game comes, but I'm getting 17% on DraftKings, so 3x the field.
Nice.
And then very quickly, Utah. So my favorite play from this game is actually Keontae George. I'm kind of fading Colin Sexton. And then with Walker Kessler back, it really hurts John Collins. I like Kessler. What do you like from this team?
I like Kessler. I think he's too cheap. I've been playing a ton of Collins. It's going to be interesting to see if he continues to start because Kessler is back, but Filipowski's still out. So there is a little bit of extra run for him there. Don't know if that's a great thing with that starting lineup, though, in terms of his usage rate. So, while Collins isn't insane if you're landing on him, I definitely feel much, much better about Kessler in this spot. But I agree. I mean, if you're choosing between the guards, Keontae George has been so much more consistent compared to Colin Sexton, even with Clarkson out, not just in minutes, but in production as well. So George over Sexton for sure for me. Going to get to some Kessler. I don't think it's terrible to get to Collins again, just because Filipowski's still out. But at that price, I mean, there's not a ton of meat on the bone. So yeah.
And Jordan Clarkson's out. What I alluded to with fading Sexton a little bit, we have him projected for 31 minutes, and I don't think we can project him for 31 minutes because he doesn't play 31 minutes a lot of the time, even with Clarkson out. I mean, it's just so volatile. And I know he burned the field when he was super chalk last time, but Keontae George's minutes have just been a lot more consistent, and so I think he's a stronger play. I still have a percentages of Colin Sexton. I'm not full fading him. I just think that Keontae George's minutes are much more secure.
Yep, totally agree. And yeah, Sexton, I think they closed last game was because he was on fire from three. But his usage rate that game was actually sub 20%. So as well as he was shooting, he wasn't seeing any extra looks. So I do like George much better.
Yeah, I think Sexton's the player to target when Laurie Markkinen's out because weirdly that's the biggest bump there. But
Yeah.
and let's see, very quickly, last game. Anything from the Lakers Phoenix? I mentioned I like the Lakers stars and maybe Austin Reeves, and then Phoenix. They're kind of just all priced appropriately. I'm not getting to anyone.
Yeah, I totally agree. With Durant, it's funny. All these guys always tend to come back against the Lakers, right? But with Beal and Durant returning to the lineup, Booker feels a little bit overpriced. I know Tyus Jones has been amazing, but that usage is going to take a really big hit tonight with these guys coming back. So there's nothing here I'm really all that interested in at all. Pretty comfortable getting away from the Suns, even in a high total game.
Yeah, I tried to play with the numbers so hard to see if there was any way to get to any Suns, and it's just not possible tonight.
Yeah,
All
I do just want to say if there was any, it'd probably be Durant. I don't think he's going to be limited when he's in. He tries to play as many minutes as possible. A little bit cheap at 8,300. Like we've seen him priced up to the 9K range. He'd be the one maybe for me, but I don't know. Again, I don't feel great about it.
I'm glad you pointed that out because this 33 minute, it could be very fragile too. I mean, if you give him 35 minutes, he probably shows up in most of your DraftKings lineups. And so maybe he can play 35 coming back from injury. We don't know. Just real quick, that's the other thing about Walker Kessler. He played a season high minutes in his first game back from injury. So I don't know that we can ever expect 35 minutes again.
No, you can't, but you got to feel good about his overall health. And like he's a guy who we were playing in this price range when he was playing like 25 per night, just because with the stocks, especially on FanDuel, he could get there quickly.
All right, guys, we made it. 2 minutes to build a dummy. Who's your first players in? I guess
Um,
which
let's go
Wizards?
with Keyshawn George and Malcolm Brogdon for me.
Keyshawn George. I don't even know what positions these guys are.
George is either forward, Brogdon's either guard.
Put Brogdon at point. Um, so here's the thing about Kyle Kuzma today. Do we put him in the dummy?
Well, the thing is, we either put Kuzma in or we put Portis in.
I think we can do both.
We could probably do both. Yeah, it's 6,300. Honestly, on DK, I mean, I'm a little bit more afraid of getting away from Kuzma than I am on FanDuel. And again, I'm heavier on FanDuel tonight, so Forgive me if my mind's slightly slanted that direction, but yeah, 500 cheaper on DK. I like Kuzma. You can't really argue with that.
And then Bobby Portis. So this is dependent on the Giannis news, but I think Giannis sits. I'm Xing him out. I'm going to lock Bobby Portis. If it doesn't work out, I can easily swap out of it, but Bobby Portis is in the court today for that reason. And then I think we want to use our utility spot on a second center. So Wemby, AD, Sengun, or Vooch.
I mean, if we could fit Wemby, I love him,
Let's
but
try it. Yeah. Let's take a look at some other. I mean, Keontae George. I mentioned my favorite play on the other side of San Antonio. So little game stack
I'm
with
cool with
Wemby.
that. I really like, I don't know, Castle from the Spurs too. Makes sense. You could play both of them though. I
Keontae
mean,
George, Malcolm Brogdon. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Stephon Castle too. I question the ceiling a little bit, but his price is definitely good for what he's been doing lately and the minutes he's been
right.
playing.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that we're going to see 30 more than 35 fantasy points from him anytime soon, but when he's at 5200 on DK, I don't need to.
And so this left it kind of awkward. 6,900 for a forward is not going to work. Giannis is out.
Is he? That's
Sorry,
big.
Discord's blown up. Okay, so Giannis is out. So Bobby Portis is definitely in the core. Someone asked about Torian Prince. He's not the type of player that. Let me actually see if I can pull this up real quick before we cut the stream. Nick, what do you? What? Okay, so now that we know Giannis is out, what do we do?
Yeah, first and foremost is Bobby Portis. He's going to be a smash here. Dame's going to see a big boost. He's probably going to project as the best guard play now. I'm happy to get to him, but Portis really is a priority for me over him. As far as Torian Prince goes, I'm still very dependent on his 3 point shot falling. So you can get to a little bit more of him. He's probably going to get a few more looks here, but at the same time, the floor is low on a play like that. Wouldn't consider him a cash play or anything in small field. And then Lopez, I get he's probably going to come in low owned compared to the rest of these guys. I do want to get over the field on him. And then someone brought up Gary Trent earlier in the day, play I had no interest in, but another player kind of similar to Prince still needs the shot to fall. But if the ownership's not going to catch up in time, I don't mind using some of these guys as a way to get off some of the chalkier Wizards.
Nice. And I try to move the dummy around. Is Damian Lillard in the core? I think it's Miami.
I'm
It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it is Miami, but at the same time, Miami hasn't really been Miami. I don't know. I think he is not because I kind of want to use value guards to get up to Wemby still. Um, he's close. I mean, on FanDuel, he probably is where he's what 88. It's the same on both sites. I don't know. Yes, in short, he should be, but I'm trying to think of ways to get away from it. But um, yeah, he's going to see all the usage he can handle here. If this game stays close, it's probably on his back.
So we have some options here, guys. I personally am not going to have Brogdon in my core, but the other guys here, this seems like a pretty strong build. And then even Wemby, you have some flexibility to swap out another center. We can still afford to pay a point guard if you do that, and then you don't have to completely punt forward. Bilal Koulibaly fit in pretty well there when I was
But
looking at it.
cool.
And I'm going to point out with Giannis off the court, Damian Lillard gets a 7% increase in usage up to 37%, which would be
Yeah,
number one in the NBA. Bobby Portis gets up to 29% usage, which is elite. And Gary Trent, 15%. And it's not that many minutes, but it's still enough that we kind of know what's going to happen here. And no one else. I mean, Brook Lopez is at 17%, and he plays like his minutes are going to go up with Giannis off the court. So maybe let's just take a really quick look at Brook Lopez before we get out of here. I mean, I might just force in a few percent now. His price is a little bit high.
yeah. I mean, he's shown the ceiling this year. If you told me coming into the season we'd see two near 60 fantasy point games out of him at this point in the season, I think Giannis was out for all of those, but he was in for those games. So we know the upside's there. I'm fine mixing him in. At the same time, I mean, there's a lot of good centers on this slate. I don't think you have to force it, but if he stays low owned, I like him a lot.
And last thing I'll mention before we get out of here, Torian Prince usage rate with Giannis Antetokounmpo off the court this year is 7.
Yeah, he's still a spacer. He's still just gonna hang
Yeah, it's the
out
lowest in the NBA.
off the
Don't boost Torian because Giannis is out. If you want to play Torian because of Torian, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But don't think because Giannis is out, you're getting a sneaky value play because you're probably not. And
That's
then
fair. Yeah.
AJ Green, 14% usage rate.
Not
I guess I
crazy.
don't mind it. Yeah, I think he's probably fine to mix in a little bit with his price, 42 and 4K. I don't mind it
Yeah,
as a really deep GPP play. Not really deep, I guess. He just has to hit threes. That's it.
yeah, very similar to Gary Trent. So keep an eye on that ownership. If Green's unowned and Trent's popular, that's a great pivot.
Well, we appreciate you guys staying with us today. We got Smitty in the Discord, probably started already. So instructions to join that are in the description below. If you want to get the updates to the model for Giannis being out, make sure you sign up for the site.